The walls of the Minoan complexes were painted with geometric borders, views of nature, scenes of human activity, and these were all depicted on murals. These murals were either painted with a technique called buon fresco, and buon fresco is a technique based on wet plaster. So basically, you are painting your image on wet plaster. This is great because it binds the pigment well to the wall, but the problem is you have to work with it when it's wet, so it forces the artist to work very quickly. Another technique that they used was called fresco a secco, and this is a dry plaster technique. There's no hurry, you don't have to worry about it drying, but it doesn't last as long as buon fresco. The paint peels off over time. So the Minoans used both of these techniques. They loved color, they loved very vibrant colors. Perhaps you can kind of see that, even though in this image it's faded, you can see those bright colors, lots of blues and reds, maybe some purples in there, looks like maybe a little bit of teal. And of course we can imagine that it would have been even more vibrant back when it was originally produced. Their wall paintings are based on very elegant drawing. They enjoyed using linear contours with very bright colors. They had a preference for profile or full-faced figures, or full-faced views. Like the Egyptians, they used a little bit of a stylized technique, same thing with kind of the Near East. And they used it to turn natural forms into decorative patterns. Unlike the Egyptians, the Minoans actually like to depict their figures in motion, doing some sort of activity. Now we saw this a little bit with the Egyptians, with some of the lower class people being depicted as in motion, as carrying out an activity, but we didn't really see that for the elite. The Minoans like to use that for everyone. This image that we're looking at is a young girl gathering saffron, and it was created before 1630 BCE. And it's from the island of Thera. Thera was basically an outpost of the Minoan culture. It was influenced by Minoan culture and art. Minoan culture spread to the Cyclades Islands and mainland Greece. In the city of Akrotiri, where this painting is found, part of this complex where this painting is found seems to be dedicated to young women's initiation ceremonies. We think here, this woman that's depicted in this image it's called young girl, but it really should be called young woman, because we think that this woman has just gone through puberty, and she's just been initiated into, or is being initiated into, the women's society. So she is actually depicted picking a purple saffron crocus, which was used for yellow dye. It was also used for flavoring foods, and it was used for medicine in menstrual cramps. So this would make sense to be a depiction on the wall of some sort of initiation household or building. The girl wears a typical colorful flounce skirt. We've seen that before here on the woman with goddess, very similar. The woman or goddess with snakes, very similar skirt style there. She also is wearing a short-sleeved shirt. She has an open breast bodice. She has large earrings and bracelets. Now, one of the reasons that we know that she is this young woman who's just been initiated or is being initiated into women's society is because of her hair. So if you look closely, you can see that this part of her hair is depicted as blue, whereas this is black. So when a woman is a girl would have a hairstyle that is like they shave their scalp and they would have a long ponytail. When a girl reaches womanhood, she lets the hair on her scalp grow out. So this woman has just started to let that hair grow out, and that's why it's depicted with this kind of different texture and different color. So she's on the cusp of womanhood. She's joining this society. She's picking this plant that has to do with womanhood. So all these kind of symbols really promote an image of, okay, this is depicting women's initiation rites or woman fertility or something like that. About 1450 BCE, the Mycenaeans from mainland Greece took over Crete. They lived in Knossos complex and other complexes throughout the island. They adopted Minoan art with either their own artists or they used Minoan artists. They stayed in Knossos until the final catastrophe and destruction at Knossos in 1375 BCE. Here we're seeing an image called Bull Leaping at Knossos, and it's an example of the Minoan art style created in this Mycenaean-dominated period. Now this is very highly restored, so we have to remember that when we're looking at it. We have three figures depicted and a bull. It might be related to a fertility or initiation ritual. The figures are wearing very few garments. They are youthful. And they are actually acrobats. So, no TV, no internet. What do you do at court? Well, you have people come and perform acrobatic shows for you. So that's what's going on here, some court entertainment. They're probably flipping over the bull. So I have a slide that might show you what is happening. So this woman grabs onto the horns, she holds onto the horns, and she lands here, and then she flips off. So that might be what they are trying to do. But we do think that these probably represent three different figures, although maybe these two are the same. There's some debate about that. We do think that these light-skinned figures are women, and that this red-skinned figure is depicting a man. The woman seems to be grabbing the bulls by the horn. She's maybe about to begin her own vault, whereas the guy has landed right here and he's about to flip off, and this person has already landed. So you can see a lot of motion. We have that nice flying gallop that we saw in the prehistoric period. But you can see a lot of motion in this type of art style. Now I mentioned this culture, the Mycenaeans, when I was talking about this culture that took over the Minoans. Later Greeks will refer to this Mycenaean culture of mainland Greece as the era of wealthy warrior kings. In the early Bronze Age, there was a migration of Greek-speaking people who moved into the mainland Greece. They brought with them metalworking, ceramics, and architectural techniques, and they displaced the indigenous Neolithic populations that had lived in the region. In the late Bronze Age, some of these people formed the Mycenaean culture. It was based on the mainland, but it really ends up taking the whole region, as you can see here in this map, that everything that's green represents what the Mycenaeans ended up holding. Now, one of the stories that we kind of need to talk about, because it actually becomes pretty important in art history, is the Trojan War. We know it through the poems of Homer. He wrote the Odyssey and the Iliad sometime before 700 BCE. Now, according to legend, this was an oral tradition, so he didn't write it down. Later, it was written down. And of course, the story was heavily modified over the ages. But the basic story is that there was this young man, and his name was Paris. And he was the son of Priam. Priam was the king of Troy. And Troy was a rich city in northwest Asia Minor. Well, Paris sees this beautiful woman. Her name is Helen. She is the daughter of Zeus and a mortal. And he falls madly in love with her. But of course there's a problem. She is married to King Menelaus, who is a Greek. Paris is pretty depressed about this, but he returns home. But when he gets home, he is asked to judge a beauty contest between the most beautiful goddesses. So Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite all want him to figure out who is the prettiest goddess of them all. Well, they all try to cheat and bribe him, but Aphrodite wins because she bribes him with the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, who of course is Helen. So Paris goes and he takes Helen and he returns to Troy. The Greeks, of course, led by King Menelaus, are not happy about this, and so they attack Troy to get her back. The Greeks are led in battle by Agamemnon, who is the king of the Mycenaeans, and the brother of King Menelaus. They lay siege to Troy for about 10 years, and then we have Odysseus, who's kind of like the star of the Odyssey. He plans the Trojan horse, which I have depicted over here. Here's that beauty contest, and here is the Trojan horse. He plans that Trojan horse where the the Greeks build this horse, and Odysseus and his crew hide inside of it, and then they leave this horse at the gates of Troy. And then the rest of the Greeks go and hide. And so when the Trojans open up the gates, all they see is this horse, and they say, oh, this is a peace offering from the Greeks. They're done. They've left. The war is over. So they're super excited. They have a great big party. They get super drunk. And, of course, at night, Odysseus and his crew pop out, and they kill them all and burn the city. Now, this story was probably actually based on a real battle between the Greeks and a coastal city of Asia Minor during the late Bronze Age. This story has endured for thousands of years, but it was heavily modified because it is an oral tradition.